So, as the circuit continues to tentatively carry on drying with the wind around the circuit, and also as well the rain having abated for the most part, we're getting set now for our third and last Caterham race of the day. And that is course 4, the Caterham 7 270R Championship. Now this is the middle step in the Caterham ladder, because they start to have a little bit more mechanical upgrades on these cars. The way it works with these cars is that when you start in the academy, you then use the same car effectively for the first 4 of the 5 championships on the factory Caterham Motorsport ladder. You start with academy, and each year you then put on specific upgrades to bring it up to the relevant specifications. So you upgrade to go to Road Sport, then again to 270R, and again to 310R. It's only when you go to the 7 UK Championship that you then pick up a bespoke Caterham race car chassis, which we've just seen on track at the moment. But this is very much the middle ground. I'm actually very privileged to say I've actually had a go in one of these cars a couple of weeks ago at Bedford Autodrome, which was quite an experience, and it is a very fun, drivable car with a lot of grip, particularly in dry conditions. I certainly wasn't pushing it quite as hard as the cars drivers will be out there this weekend, even with the wet conditions, but it certainly gave a really nice sensation of speed. It was beautifully balanced. So these cars, it takes a lot for them to break traction. Obviously the weather conditions we've got here are a factor, but of course even in the dry they offer so much grip for being so light and so nimble and so wonderfully stiffly set up that they give such great response. And I remember driving when we had them at Bedford, and just every single thing I wanted the car to do, to turn in, to brake, to hit an apex, to accelerate, everything it did, the car just responded. It was almost, it's a little bit sort of typical to say, but it's almost telepathic in terms of what I wanted the car to do. Just even turn in and the car would just hit an apex beautifully. So definitely a fantastic middle ground car, and they do say it's a coming of age championship because for 270, because they've had the first 2 seasons in Academy and Road Sport, and they've had those 2 seasons to learn how these cars work, how to race against each other, just to get used to the whole way of going racing with Caterham Motorsport. And so by season 3 they've had enough experience to be able to see themselves as quite seasoned racers, and of course then they should be able to start going through and getting quicker and quicker and making further progress, which sees the entire field start to get closer and closer in terms of competitiveness and lap times. And it means then you get more and more drivers involved for the championship in terms of scoring points and race wins and podiums, and every single year you see the same group of drivers that started in a particular academy year going up together, and you get the same amount of drivers that build that level of trust, that level of respect, and a level of friendship on track, but there's always plenty of hard battles going on as well. So let's give you the grid then as they head off for their formation lap for the first race of their 2021 season. And on pole position for race 1 is going to be number 81, the man who's won 2 titles on the bounce in the last couple of years in Academy and Road Sport. It's number 81, Tom Willis, and he starts alongside Will Rossetti in car number 29. He was a bit sluggish getting away from the grid, was Will, but he is there in the mix. There he is in the golf-coloured machine. Row 2 is number 11, Carl Jones. Alongside him is 55, Harry Eyre. Then it's Blair McConaughey in 5th, who's been the almost perennial rival to Tom Willis in the last couple of years. Those two have been going at it for the championship in both Academy and Road Sport respectively against one another, and both times it's been Tom that's come out on top, and Blair will certainly want to try and put one over him this season to try and pick up a title for his own. Max Gaunt starts alongside him on the 3rd row of the grid. Then it's Wes Payne and Fraser Jones on the 4th row of the grid, followed by Tim Steele and Stuart Bell rounding up the top 10. Demetrius Melas starts 11th alongside Rob Keogh in 12th position. Row 7 is Chris Ephraimidis and Daryl Cresswell on the 7th row of the grid in 13th and 14th. Then it's William Brunt and Alan Curtis on row 8, Ryan Errol and Paul Herndon on row 9, and Stefano Mara, who's a new addition to the grid, on the 10th row alongside Paul Farrell. And then next comes John Cox and Oliver Smith, Michael Curley and David Morgan, Roger Gaunt and Peter Wales, Richard Hoare and Stephen Hutchinson. And then at the back of the grid is Duncan Cook in 29th position. So a fairly hefty grid of 29 cars getting set for their first 30 minutes of action. So it's the longest of the Caterham races that you'll see this weekend, the 30-minute race. And usually you tend to get quite a lot of battling in the first half. By the time you get to 15 minutes, you're almost breathless. But with the slightly ever increasingly drying track out here, we might well see the cars going quicker and quicker, and drivers starting to be a little bit braver out there as they try to explore the limits and see just how dry and quick it's really getting. So, just for notification, it's Tom Willis in the silver and black car on the left-hand side on pole position. Alongside him, in the almost golf-coloured like blue and fluorescent orange colours, is Will Rossetti. And just the car with the green roll cage just behind Will there, that is your third place man on the grid, Carl Jones. And Harry Ayres alongside him, and Blair McConaughey's car is the white car with the black nose, alongside him with Max Gaunt in car number 4. The runyourfleet.com course car is in place at the back of the grid, and the green flag will be flown. That means we'll get the 5-second board, and we're all set to get underway here for the first Caterham 7 270R race of the season. Tom Willis and Will Rossetti on the front row of the grid. Let's see who wins the sprint down towards Redgate. Lights out, and it's racing time for 270R, and down towards the turn 1 they go. Everyone gets away cleanly. It's a good start from the outside of the front row for Will Rossetti. But looks as though I think Tom Willis will try and go with him and slot into second place unless he's dare enough to go down the outside. Everyone's just trying to pick their line very carefully as they turn in. The car's going 2 or 3 abreast in the mix. I can see car number 9 in the mix. That's Rob Keogh. That's in the Harry Cook car, I think, who I think so he's picked up a new car for this season. So Rob Keogh in the same colour scheme as it was last year. But out of the Craner Curves for the first time, or out of Redgate through the Craner Curves, I should say. And they're all trying to pick their way through. Stuart Bell's in the mix there in the grey and orange machine, up the inside of car 14, which is Fraser Jones. So that's the battle that's going on there. Stuart Bell started 10th. He's up a couple more spots already. And Darryl Cresswell there in the white, blue and pink machine. He's having a battle, I think, there with Chris Ephraimidis. But up towards McLean's for the first time. All looking fairly clean and tidy so far in the first couple of laps. And it looks to be as if it is now Rossetti who leads the way, which it is, from Willis in second place and Carl Jones in third. And so Andy, so far it seems to be relatively clean so far, but of course being a Caterham race we know sometimes it can literally kick off at any second.
Yes, and what I'm definitely noticing is that the track conditions are better now than they were half an hour or so ago. I've just spent the last half an hour with my head buried in Fun Cup driver sequence sheets and things, so I hadn't seen the track for about half an hour, and I've just looked out the window and it is noticeably less wet than it was when I last looked, so that's good because it means there'll be more grip. It also means the drivers are going to be having a little bit more confidence now maybe to get stuck in and get into some proper slipstreaming Caterham racing. Across the line they go then. It is Will Rossetti that leads the opening lap, despite having started behind Tom Willis on the grid. Willis there in second place, Jones third, Blair McConaughey fourth, and those four already starting to get away slightly. Side by side then for fifth position, that will be Gaunt and Harry Ayres, won't it, that are wheel to wheel. They pan out of shot, not sure which one came out on top, but I think on the inside line Gaunt should have held onto the position. A brilliant sight they make though, as they make their way through Redgate and back down the Craner Curves, where not only is there a bit more grip, but also a little bit less standing water now, so less spray being kicked into the drivers' faces. Yeah, not as treacherous as it was earlier on, particularly for the Formula 4 team. They're kicking up quite a lot. Up the inside goes Stuart Bell. That's a move on Wes Payne, looking to get the undercut. That's a slightly different colour car for Wes Payne. It's quite a fancied up pearlescent colour scheme. He had a more of a purpley sort of pearlescent colour scheme, where he's kind of a bit more, he's kind of gone full, I don't know, like a pearl or slightly rainbowish colour. Also, I couldn't quite tell what it was. Or it's very pearlescent or iridescent on that colour scheme in either way. We'll have to talk about colour schemes though. We've got some racing to look at, which is of course our top three here of Will Rossetti, Tom Willis and Carl Jones, and not too far away is Blair McConaughey. And I was mentioning in the build-up, of course, with Tom Willis and Blair McConaughey, and I mentioned it in the preview as well, on track at least in the last 2 seasons, and even in the esports race with CaterhamRace.com, Tom Willis and Blair McConaughey, I might have to come back in a second because they move on for second place, but those two on track just cannot leave each other alone, because whenever one is, there's the other, and they're always battling amongst each other. They might have a chance now actually, because Carl Jones slips past for second place into the Robert chicane, and Blair McConaughey's right there. Case in point, Carl Jones up to second place, and look who's right behind Tom, causing more trouble. The third year in succession, and these two really have an everlasting rivalry that just doesn't seem to end. And I think secretly they do both enjoy it, but at the same time, it's quite amusing that where one is, you literally always find the other. And you just know that at the end of any qualifying or practice session, the first thing they each do is look to see where the other one is, and 9 times out of 10, as you say, they're not that far away from each other at all. Max Gaunt there on the outside line, the number 4 car. He has lost a few places on that lap, hasn't he? Because I mentioned he was, well, I think he was 5th at the start of the previous lap. He has now dropped his way down into 8th position, with Harry Ayres up into 5th position. 6th place now is the number 19, as you can see on the side of your screen. That's Bell, who started 10th, did Stuart Bell. So there's been quite a lot of shuffling in the midfield there, well, right the way through the field, but certainly on that particular lap, the second half of the top 10 really jumbled up a little bit as people start now to settle into a rhythm. 30 minutes this race, so they've got time to pace themselves in theory in the early stages, but of course the concern is that if the leaders break away, it can sometimes be difficult to catch them, and we are sort of seeing that, aren't we? The top 5 have got then a 3-second cushion back to Stuart Bell in 6th, so Stuart's going to be eager here, I think, to get after them before they get too far ahead. Yeah, that'd be the benefit of clear track, of course, because particularly in these conditions, of course, there's not just any
potential turbulent air off the cars that are coming up, and also still the amount of standing water in the mix. So of course, because these cars don't have windscreens, of course, basically the first thing that the water hits is your visor on your helmet. So effectively, you've got almost zero visibility. You constantly have to try and wipe your visor, or at least dump a ton of Rain-X on it to make sure it just glides off, as one car's gone sliding off the road, probably through lack of visibility, I think. Couldn't quite tell who that was. He comes back onto the track, but either way, that was Wes Payne. In fact, he was a bit slow on the exit of that corner. He's now dropped from what was 7th to about roughly, he's gone behind the 14, which is Fraser Jones. He's roughly now down to back about, well, 10th position. He's lost 3 spots there, as Gaunt, Keogh and Jones all took advantage of that straight away. Leaders, though, Will Rossetti is now leading by 1.3 seconds with a new fastest lap of the race at the end of lap number 3. Battle there between 27 and 53. That is Chris Ephraimidis and 53 of Tim Steele. And looks like, I think possibly that was Ephraimidis in front. So it's nice to see there's a couple of new names in the grid amongst all those who have moved up from the 270R ranks, because it is typically drivers that will go through the same in the academy class that go up together. But you do occasionally get some new drivers popping in to kind of populate the field and be a few wild cards that you might not know too much about or what to expect from them. So it's nice to see from time to time that they pop up.
Yeah, that's always exciting for us as well, because as you say, there is this natural progression through the Caterham ranks, and so we kind of have an idea who the pace setters are likely to be at the start of the season. But when there's a brand new name that comes in, as you said, it is a wild card. We never quite know how they're going to fare and where in the established running order they're going to find themselves. But yeah, that's the great thing about Caterham's, isn't it, though? It appeals even not just to brand new drivers, but to drivers that are looking for a long-term racing career in many ways. There are certainly worse things you can do if you want to learn how to be a racing driver than strap yourself into a Caterham. They've got absolutely no aerodynamics, all about mechanical grip. You've got to be comfortable with a car moving and sliding around underneath you. It teaches you all of the basics, a bit like Formula Ford, but in a slightly different way, of how to be a good racing driver.
Yeah, I've always called Caterhams the Formula Ford of sports cars, because not only they're very similar in terms of setup with skinny tyres. These cars will run Ford engines as well, effectively, in some context, but very limited horsepower. But they do very much in the way Formula Ford does in general for racing, but mainly single-seaters. As we see Wes Payne getting back up the inside of Fraser Jones, and a big battle going on here with Demetrius Melas in the middle of it. Daryl Cresswell's in there, as is also Tim Steele and also Chris Ephraimidis. So Chris has managed to not only get away from Tim Steele, but then drop him into a scrap between Daryl and Cresswell and Demetrius Melas. So he's trying to escape up the road and probably looking at his mirrors and with a wry smile to himself, thinking, you battle amongst yourselves and we'll carry on. I also noticed as well, it's a very novel thing to notice, but it looks like Tim Steele is the only car that's kept his headlights on, which is usually for 270R the rule is you take them off, but I think maybe either Caterham made an exception or he simply just forgot or wanted to make use of them because he felt in these conditions it would be much more of a benefit.
You read my mind. I was literally about to ask you why he's the only car with his headlights still on. I wondered if you knew if they were, presumably it's not mandatory that you lose them, but it saves weight and makes the car a bit more aerodynamic. But he's clearly decided that in these conditions, I take it you can just bolt them on fairly easily. It's not a difficult thing to stick them back on. So with it being a bit dark and gloomy out there, he's obviously decided that might be a good idea. Not necessarily for his visibility, because I doubt it's making a huge amount of difference, but more to let other people know where he is on track, because we've all been there, haven't we? If some idiot's driving behind you down the motorway in pouring down rain and they haven't got their headlights on, you have no idea where they are, but as soon as you see that flash of light, you know there's a car right behind you, usually asking you politely to get out of the way, but that's my experience anyway. Anyway, moving on. Yes, Tim Steele in 13th position is certainly not letting those headlights slow him down, is he? He is staying right on the tail of the group of cars ahead of him. His nearest rival is Daryl Cresswell in that number 8 car, who he's going to try and attack on the run towards Redgate Corner. At the head of the field, by the way, Will Rossetti, well, 1.6 seconds, let's call that now, ahead of Carl Jones in second place with Tom Willis third. So the gap's ever so slightly going out, although Willis on that lap, Scott, was quicker than anyone else. Yeah, fastest lap of the race for him, 1:33.767, and he was at least, looking at the pace advantage, he had about roughly 6 to 8 tenths better than the 2 cars in front. He was 6 tenths quicker than Rossetti, 8 tenths quicker than Jones, so certainly using the advantage that he's got, and of course proving why he's a double defending champion in the previous 2 ranks. As for Blair McConaughey, he's now falling into the clutches of Harry Eyre. It was interesting to see that behind the top 2, second down to 6th, and then 8th and 9th have also done personal best. So out of the top 10, just over half of them did their own personal best laps. 6 of the top 10 all running faster lap times than they have so far this race. McConaughey 4th from Harry Ayres putting him under that pressure. Stuart Bell back in 6th, but he's now some 8.5 seconds back, which is like we see in other races today, pretty much, where you'll get a group of 3 or 4 cars, then they will kind of almost, whether they're working together or not,
subconsciously, they will be the determined pace setters, and they will pull away by a few seconds and leave the rest of the pack to scrap amongst themselves.
Yes, indeed. So as you run side by side, you're always going to delay each other, aren't you, and allow the cars around you to go a little bit quicker. There's a move on here around the outside low. That's the 55 car of Harry Eyre, trying to take 4th place and succeeding in taking 4th place away from Blair McConaughey. That was a nice move and a great example of how that grip is not on the inside line at Redgate Corner. There is still plenty of surface water, isn't there, as well? So yeah, that's why I think we're seeing the lap times getting better and better here. Eyre with the fastest lap, actually, just before he made that move. Once the bulk of the surface water has gone, then we get into this sort of greasy stage where actually there's, ironically, a bit less grip than when it's full wet. So I think the drivers at the moment are enjoying the last of the quick conditions, if you like, before they really start slipping and sliding around. But Will Rossetti looking comfortable out in front at the moment. A couple of tenths slower than Jones on the previous lap, but not enough to concern him massively. Jones, though, does have his hands full, rather, doesn't he, of Tom Willis then. Tom Willis, the pole sitter, by nearly 0.8 of a second. But how many times have we seen today, Scott, that putting together a quick lap in qualifying does not mean you're going to have it all your own way in the races? I think pretty much every race so far today, we've seen the same thing happen.
No, you do find some drivers who are quicker every single lap, but then trying to maintain that pace over consecutive laps, they still have to try and find the skill. And you get it the other way around. Some drivers who aren't as fast over a single lap, but if you give them, they have incredible race pace and consistency, that means they can pump out relatively fast race lap after fast race lap to make sure they can get a good run and build up a gap. So you might get someone who qualifies 5th or 6th on the grid, a little bit deeper than from the front row, but then if they start to really put in some quick lap times, can actually pick their way through and even maybe look after their tyres a bit better compared to other cars around them. So it is quite a contrast to some people, and it seems to be a theme in terms of the pole sitter never really is able to get away and use that advantage, because the wet conditions are certainly playing quite a leveler in terms of performance and driver skill, and it's those who can handle them better that are taking full advantage. As you say, Andy, it's not necessarily the man who got the pole in those adverse conditions in qualifying. Yeah,
at the end of the day, the bulk of the points are offered at the end of the race, not at the end of qualifying, so it's all well and good qualifying on pole, but you're not going to win championships just by taking pole positions. This battle's still raging on here. This is essentially the fight for 10th place-ish, isn't it, or 11th place really, with Jones, Demetrius Melas. We've got the number 8 still in this battle as well, haven't we, of Darryl Creswell, and right at the back of it, with his headlights still very much ablaze, is the number 53 of Tim Steele, who started light on the grid, so Tim has slipped back a bit in the early stages, and now he's just finding it difficult to get past the cars ahead, and that does sort of prove the point that these cars are pretty much identical in performance. Well-regulated championships, the Caterham Championships, mean that there's no performance difference between the cars. That means that if you're going to make an overtake, you have to make it happen yourself, and this group have been in the same positions now for quite a number of laps. No one really able to find the opening or the advantage they need against the car ahead, but it's close enough that one little mistake could really see this battle ignite. So with all of these different lines being taken, the ever-changing grip levels, don't count out a few positional changes before the end. Likewise at the front of the field, because Carl Jones in second place just posted the new fastest lap, 4 tenths quicker than the leaders. The gap went down 2 laps ago, went out again last lap, back down to under a second and a half at the end of lap number 8.
And that fastest lap has been yo-yoing between the top 4 or 5 drivers over the last few laps anyway, so that's a valid point in terms of the grip levels are adapting, and it's those who can seek out where the grip is quickest that will be able to get those faster lap times and take full advantage. And it's kind of only then one person has to be the pioneer and say, right, this is where the grip is, and once everyone else sees that, they think, right, I'm going to go there next time. So it's kind of, it's intriguing how everyone has to kind of take a different line, and eventually one will stick, and it's off. One come off in the gravel who hasn't kept it on track, sadly, is number 77.
Oliver Smith.
Oliver Smith started back in 22nd on the grid, and unfortunately that is a rather unwanted premature end, and for the first time today the runyourfleet.com safety car is going to head out on track. That means that everyone will have to bunch up, which means we get to see it on camera for the first time, but I guess in a nice way, the one set of people that didn't want to see it too much are the drivers, although there's probably one might get a bit of respite in these what are becoming now intermediate conditions now. They get a bit of chance to take a breather. I guess the one person who really didn't want to see it is Will Rossetti, because of course he loses that 1.3 second advantage. As small as it was still an advantage, and he now has to cope with the fact he's got Carl Jones, Tom Willis, Harry Eyre and everyone else behind him that will be snapping at his heels on the restart, and it'll be down to him to decide, effectively determine if he keeps onto it or not by the quality of his restart when we get going again.
Yeah, the only saving grace, I guess, is that all of these this time behind the safety car does count towards the 30 minutes. So I guess if we spend 2 or 3 laps here behind the runyourfleet.com safety car, then we might, that at least gives him a bit of respite in that it's a couple of laps less that he has to defend from Carl Jones. But you're right, Carl is going to be rubbing his hands with glee here. And probably try and get some heat into them as well, because it must be rather chilly pedalling one of these open-topped Caterhams around the Donington Park circuit. But Carl Jones will be putting all thoughts of the uncomfortable position that he finds himself in to one side, because he sees now a real chance to challenge for the lead. There's the live snatch vehicle already into action. They've kept Oliver Smith at the wheel so that he can help with the recovery by steering the car to safety. They might even just drag him out of the gravel and send him on his way back to the pit lane or something. The live snatch here at Donington is really, really useful, because it means that we can neutralise the race for the shortest amount of time possible, and hopefully allow the marshals to move the car pretty quickly, get back to racing again very, very soon. And when we do, we're going to have just over probably a third of the race to go. And still, realistically, any one of 5 drivers can win it, because as you've said, all of those top 5 drivers have at one point or another been the fastest car on the track.
Yeah, and that will certainly be an interesting scrap between them, because now they're all back together. You get to see exactly who has got the pace now, rather than having to try and watch drivers pick up a few more tenths per lap to try and close that back in again. So the Jaguar XF Sport Brake safety car, which has been supplied, thank you, by runyourfleet.com to the BRSCC for this season, has picked up the leaders and is leading them around at that reduced pace. Thankfully, Oliver Smith has managed to, with the help of the live snatch, amble his way out of the gravel, across the grass and back onto the track. He has sadly lost a lap though, and he won't have enough time, unfortunately. I don't think. It's highly unlikely he'll get that lap back, sadly, so he will have to run towards the back of the grid. And thankfully, his on the timing screen, it shows him as the exclamation mark next to it, saying that his car stopped. Usually that means that his car is out, but thankfully when he comes back through, he'll be back on the timing screen, albeit 29th and last, sadly. So let's just give you a recap of where we are then in that race order. Will Rossetti then leads the way from Carl Jones in 2nd place. Tom Willis is 3rd. Harry Eyre is in 4th position, followed by Blair McConaughey in 5th. Stuart Bell is 6th, from Roger Gaunt, Wes Payne, Rob Keogh and Chris Ephraimidis. Chris actually having quite a good run. This is his first, as far as I'm aware, his first race with Caterham Motorsport, particularly in the 270R rank. Started 13th. He's currently running in the top 10 at the moment, so good run for one of the newcomers to the championship this year, and certainly showing his worth. 11th place for Dimitris Melas at the moment, who, looking back at to talk about him for a second, he was someone who was pretty quick. He was massively quick in qualifying back in the academy days in 2019, and took a race win, I think, at Snetterton, if I'm correct as well. I should know because I was there, I think. And then 2020. Looking back at the points table, it might not tell the whole story, but it tells a story that he didn't really have the year he was anticipating based on some of his form he had in the academy, because he ended up towards the bottom of the top 20, but his ultimate pace proves that he can perform much higher than that, but just didn't get the chance in the truncated season that we had to really show what he could do against some of the drivers which he was as quick as in the previous year in the academy.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well, because the 2020 season obviously was a shorter season than normal, so a lot of drivers that have maybe just spent 1 year in whatever championship they were in last year and then moved up to the next level, they've got a bit less experience maybe in that particular category than they normally would have done, so it's sort of fast-tracked almost the process, the progress through the Caterham ladder for a few drivers, and maybe that's just leading to a few of them maybe not quite fulfilling their full potential here right at the start of 2021, but we are hopeful we'll get a full season of racing in this year, and they'll get their full year of experience in whichever category it is they're racing in. So yeah, interesting point that actually. Certainly a bit less track time last year than they would have been hoping to have. We're hoping though we can give them another 10 or 11 minutes here of racing time at the end of this one, because as far as I can tell, the extrication of Oliver Smith's car down at the old hairpin has been complete. I haven't actually spotted whether he came back into the pit lane or whether he's tagged to the back of the queue. I don't think there was any damage, was there? So in theory, he should have been able to join on the back of the queue, which hopefully will go back to racing speed very shortly.
Yeah, he hasn't shown as being had a pit stop at all, so he's at the back in 29th. But lights are out now on the runyourfleet.com safety car, which means that we are going to get racing back underway very, very shortly. So the Jaguar makes its way back into pit lane. Will Rossetti will then be released to try and get the best restart he can on the run towards Redgate Corner to get the race back underway with just under 11 minutes to go over the 270 yards. It's a fairly late restart because I think Will was watching the safety car more than what was going on in his mirrors, but he has managed to hold on to believe for the moment. For second place though, Tom Willis feels like he wants to try and make a move on Carl Jones. It's almost 3 abreast behind him. That's Stuart Bell, I think, with Max Gaunt and Wes Payne. They were scrapping over 6th, 7th and 8th, but it is Rossetti who leads the way, then an exit out of Redgate. That was close between Max Gaunt and Wes Payne, wasn't it?
Yeah, Wes is one of the drivers for whom this has definitely been a benefit, this safety car, because he had that off, didn't he, at the chicane earlier on, where he decided to let the marshals down there have a closer look at his car, try and decide exactly what colour it is. And I see what you mean, by the way. It looks a completely different colour based on which angle you're looking at it from. I quite like liveries like that. He's going quickly as well. He has gained a place, more importantly, despite almost making contact with Gaunt as they went through Redgate Corner. Up towards McLean as we go then. Battle on for second place. Jones under pressure from Tom Willis, who's trying to get himself back into this now. Tom Willis having started on pole position. Jones goes in very deep trying to find the grip, and that did sort of work. He comes off the corner quicker than the cars around him, gaps Willis and gets right back onto the tail of Will Rossetti, the leader.
So top 5 altogether now, nose to tail. There's Blair McConaughey, who's holding on to 5th position, and Stuart Bell, I think is hold on! And that's Carl Jones loses the back. I think there was contact, must have been possibly maybe with Tom Willis, possibly Harry Air, because he's lost the right rear wing. Tries to get back onto the circuit, but it looks as though I think that the fact he's missing a part of his body where it suggests there was a little bit of a touch on the exit of Coppice Corner, and that's now not only released Rossetti, but it's bunched everyone up for second backwards. And I think also we lost Tom Willis as well. I think we have. Tom Willis has disappeared, and has even Harry Air gone somewhere as well, because we've now got, well, Harry Air's still there. He's in 3rd place. So let's just reset where we were, because it all happened so quickly. So it was well spotted by Andy when that happened. So Will Rossetti leads. Blair McConaughey's in 2nd place now. Harry is up to 3rd. Rob Keogh's up to 4th in Harry Cook's old car. Then it's Stuart Bell 5th. Wes Payne, Max Gaunt, Fraser Jones, Chris Efremides and Demetrius Melas. As for Tom Willis and Carl Jones, well, Carl Jones come back through in 15th. As for Tom Willis, sadly, nowhere to be seen.
Willis, I think I saw in the background, was still digging himself off the grass on the exit of Coppice, because he spun, I think, trying to avoid Carl Jones. Jones had already gone round, and I think Willis either collected him and then spun, or spun trying to avoid him and got into the side of Jones. Either way, he ended up pointing the wrong way and a long way off the track to driver's right coming out of Coppice Corner. So that has completely changed the complexion of the race now, because all of a sudden, with 8 1/4 minutes to go, Will Rossetti, the leader, has a 3.2 second advantage now over McConaughey in 2nd and Harry Air in 3rd place. Up the inside there at the old hairpin, there's a move being made by Michael Curley. The 99 moves ahead of Oliver Smith in the number 77. So there is Oliver Smith, who of course is technically a lap down, but very much still in the group as they drop down through the bottom of the hill. But that has blown apart now, that leading quintet of drivers that we were so looking forward to seeing the battle between, and it really has handed this on a plate now to Rossetti.
And also, ironically, you think about it, I was literally about to say before that what looked like was perceived move for second place was going on, ironically, at the detriment of Tom Willis, who spun, of all the people it benefits the most, it's Blair McConaughey. He's up to 2nd place now. So Blair now up into a podium place. Harry Air is 3rd. And hats off to Rob Keogh, because we know that's a quick car from last year that won races, but certainly making the most of it is Rob. And now he's under threat from a Stuart Bell, who... It's nice to see him back as a front runner in the last couple of seasons, because it took a year off, as there's now side by side for second place going on between Air and McConaughey, and Air splits his way through up into P2 past McConaughey, which is quite a handy move there for Harry. But Stuart, a couple of years ago, he was battling for the title and had quite an unfortunate accident up actually here at Redgate Corner, which left him out of racing for about a year or two or so. He did come back to do some racing last year, but up until that point, he was actually in contention for the championship and was always a very quick driver. So it's nice to see him back, but not just that, but to show he's lost none of his speed and be able to keep up with the front runners, and look as though if he gets a bit more track time this year with the car he's got underneath him with these upgrades, potentially in the front for a possible title challenge if he can get himself a bit quicker. Yeah, if he can start off this quickly, then you imagine the more races he gets back under his belt again, the more competitive he will become. Critically, he stayed out of trouble in this, whilst others have not. So you don't always have to be the quickest driver out there to score good points. Just stay out of trouble, avoid the contact that others get involved in, and you could find yourself running towards the front, which is exactly what he's doing now. Rossetti then leads the way. It is now, as we've said, Harry Air, look, in 2nd position, the green and yellow car. Now, what is his lap time here going to be
in relation to Rossetti. You can see that he's getting away from Blair McConaughey in third, but what's the lead gap going to be? It was 3.6 seconds at the end of lap 13. At the end of lap 14, it's 2.9, and there was an overtake in there as well for Harry Eyre. So Eyre is quicker than Rossetti, but 3 seconds in 6 minutes. Can he get there?
You were saying about how this race was on a plate for Rossetti. So
I shouldn't have said that, should I?
it's the typical commentator's curse or so in the cases, because it's cursed with Rossetti in losing pace to Harry Eyre. So, but I've made as many gaffes as well, so I think that's possibly equally as bad as mine, I'm sure. Anyway, 5.5 minutes to go then. Will Rossetti does lead, but of course, as well pointed out by Andy, of course, the fact that Harry Eyre is lapping that quickly means that the time that he's got and the amount of lap time, a typical lap time is 1.5 minutes. So roughly, he can get about another 3 or 4 laps in, and if he's that quick, it's doable, but of course, as the late great Murray Walker said, of course, catching's one thing, passing's another, and you've spotted something on Andy, on the timing screen.
No, I was reading the wrong number. I thought Wes Payne had dropped down the order, but it's the similarly liveried number 8 that had lost a place there of Darryl Creswell. So no, all good still. Wes Payne running in that 6th position. There is Blair McConaughey in 3rd position, and again you can see that gap between 3rd and 4th definitely going up now. Yeah, as a general rule, if I say that something's going to happen in a motor race, the exact opposite will almost always happen. So, yeah, I was fully expecting it. I said that just because I wanted there to be a good fight at the front. I thought if I say that this race is over, then there's every chance that Harry Eyre was going to prove me wrong, and that's exactly what he's doing. Well, he was on the last lap anyway. Let's see what the lap times are this time, though, because, of course, it could be that Rossetti has responded now. He does a 1:33.728, which is fractionally quicker this time than Harry Eyre. So there you go. The gap goes back out again by a few hundredths of a second, but possibly Rossetti was just taking a bit longer to get some heat back into the tyres. Now that he has, he's managing the gap. Here's the battle behind, though, for 4th position, and that is Rob Keogh then just about hanging on. Rob, from 12th on the grid, finds himself in 4th position, and I don't think that he's keen to give that 4th place away here anytime soon. Defending busily there from Bell behind, whilst further down the order, those that were in strife earlier on are trying to work their way back towards the sharp end of the field as well. Most notably, of course, Carl Jones, who is now back into the top 10. He's in 10th position, Carl Jones, after that spin earlier on. Tom Willis is... as there's another moment there at Redgate, Scott.
I'd love to tell who it is, but I couldn't see the numbers, so unfortunately I have to wait and see on that one. One thing I've discovered as well, which I probably should know if I did a bit more research over the week, is that the Rob Keogh that's in that cage room, I'm assuming he's the same one. It's the same. I'd like to think the same Rob Keogh that was second in the G40 Cup in 2019, which probably explains the reason why he's actually quite prominent in one of these cars already, because the Ginetta itself is quite obviously a nimble car on its own. So he's obviously quite used to small, twitchy, nimble little sports cars, but of course getting to grips with the Caterham is in some cases a little bit of a different animal compared to anything else that you drive. So, but racing experience included, Rob appears to be taken to the Caterham pretty quickly, and of course he's got a strong Caterham in Harry Cook's car from last year to put underneath him from Williams Automobile, so certainly making the most of it. And yeah, looking at it now, that makes sense as to how he's been so quick in his first time out there. As for the leaders now, with just about 2 3/4 minutes to go, again I say it's rather tentatively, but even down to Redgate, it is getting drier and drier out there. So, because it always looked like it was, the camera gave the illusion that it was actually almost bone dry, but it's not. There's still, as you can see, plenty of water on the circuit, particularly off the racing line, and the gap actually now has gone back up now to 3.6 seconds between Rossetti and Eyre, because it was a new personal best for Will Rossetti, 1:33.225 compared to a 1:33.7 for Harry Eyre last time. Blair McConaughey was a couple of tenths quicker than the 55 car in 3rd place, 1:33.5 for his personal best. Rob Keogh is holding on for 4th, and then we've got this battle going on here between Payne. Oops, car number 30 off in the gravel. That is Max. It's Roger Gaunt. Get the right driver. Roger Gaunt in a semi-livered car. It's obviously Max. They're obviously related, but Roger Gaunt off in the gravel. That looked like it was up at Coppice.
Yeah, popular place to go off, that, isn't it? That blind crest. The car goes light, and when it's a bit slimy and greasy like it is up there, it's very easy indeed to slip off the road. But there you can see he's absolutely fine. Jogs away in confirmation that it is at Coppice, because we got that iconic shot of the cars appearing over the hill just in the background as he jogged through the gravel, which is not easy to do. I've fallen over in many a gravel trap, you'll be shocked to hear, Scott, because they're quite difficult to walk through. Anyway, on track it's equally as slippery, but it's not stopping them from getting stuck in here, is it? We've got side by side again, and a bit of wheel banging maybe. That's Wes Payne, isn't it? Going up the inside of Stuart Bell for 5th position, and I'm not convinced they had to bang wheels there, but anyway, Wes Payne's gone through, and that probably has fired Stuart Bell up a little bit now, so expect him to try and fight back at Redgate Corner. There are the leaders, only 2.1 seconds apart now, as Harry Eyre again pumps in a decent lap that time and closes in slightly on Rossetti ahead. McConaughey a safe 3rd, Keogh looking ever more secure in 4th. The real battle, the one for 5th, with Wes Payne, who was ahead last time we saw, and I think they're still wheel to wheel coming off Redgate, with Payne just about keeping his nose in front.
Yeah, it looked like Stuart Bell. I saw the flash of the colours, and it looked like it was the grey and orange car that was still in front of the Wes Payne kind of pearlescent, iridescent coloured car. We'll get confirmation. Yeah, there it is. It's still... Oh, no, maybe it's not. No, it's not. Sorry, forgive me. I didn't realise Rob Keogh was still that close in front of him. So it's Rob Keogh, then still Wes Payne, then Stuart Bell. Meanwhile, we are actually on the final lap of the race now, by the looks of things. 30 seconds or so left to go. And Will Rossetti, he lost that time because he had quite a slow lap, 1:35.1 last time by. He lost 1.6 seconds on that last lap for some reason, whether he had a mistake or something, or whether he backed up. Again, he might have backed up because of maybe yellow flags up at Coppice, because remember, you can't overtake anyone, not even lapped cars, under a yellow flag section. There is Roger Gaunt's car that's stuck at Coppice Corner, so they're just covering it with waved yellows until the race is finished. But the clock is about to tick down to 0, and once again it's been a race where once the leader gets out in front, it's pretty much set its ways. It hasn't been a typical Caterham weekend. We've seen photo finishes, but the wet conditions can mix things up a little bit, but certainly not getting mixed up too much is Will Rossetti, who will head to the checker flag, and he picks up race win number 1 of 2021 in the Caterham 270R Championship. Rossetti wins race 1 at Donington and weaves in delight as he picks up the victory. 2nd place for Harry Eyre, and 3rd for McConaughey. He's equally delighted. 4th and 5th a sprint to a line. There has been a change for 5th because Stuart Bell did get past Wes Payne, but it's 4th for Rob Keogh, 5th for Payne, and Bell 6th for Payne. Max Gaunt 7th, Carl Jones 8th, Demetrius Melas in 9th, and Fraser Jones rounding out the top 10. Chris Ephraimidis on his first appearance in the Caterham picks up 11th spot from Tim Steele in 12th. And then the rest of the top 15 makes its way through. But some nice, exciting racing from the Caterham 7 270R Championship. And of course, that will be the perfect start to the year for Will Rossetti. He's also had winning starts to seasons before, in seasons gone by. And we'll certainly be hoping that 2021 is... This is certainly a positive omen for him and the start of what hopefully can be a nice title challenge. But he knows he'll have plenty of top drivers in the mix. And whilst Harry Eyre and Blair McConaughey picked up 2nd and 3rd, I think the one that's impressed me the most, truthfully, out of everyone in the mix, has actually spotted... I've just spotted on the timing screen as well, a new fastest lap of the race from, of all people, after he managed to get back on the road, Tom Woodwiss, who finished 15th. He managed to get back on the road and was ambled his way back onto the circuit in some 27th position. But even then, he used the safety car to his advantage. He picked up, what was that, about 12 spots or so after he recovered off there to 15th, and gets the fastest lap point as well as a result of that, which is which could be make the difference if he has to drop that round or even use those points to his advantage later on. But whilst the top 3 are established Caterham races, I have to say the one that impressed me the most is Rob Keogh, 4th place for him after he picked up a strong result. Let's quickly go through the result then on screen. So it's Will Rossetti who takes the first victory in the 270R ranks from Harry Eyre and Blair McConaughey. Then Rob Keogh on his Caterham debut, at least I perceive it is, 4th for him, excellent result. Stuart Bell is 5th. From Wes Payne in 6th, then Max Gaunt, Carl Jones, Demetrius Melas and Fraser Jones. Chris Ephraimidis 11th on his Caterham debut. Tim Steele finishes 12th ahead of Darryl Cresswell and William Brunt. Tom Willis recovers, going from pole to a spin and then back up to 15th with the fastest lap of the race from Mara, Herndon, Curtis, Farrell and Cox in the top 20. And then Stephen Hutchinson ahead of David Morgan, Ryan Errol, Peter Wales, Duncan Cook, Roger Hoare, Michael Curley and Oliver Smith, who had that off in the gravel that caused the safety car, and we've managed to get back out, albeit 2 laps down, and we lost Roger Gaunt late on after he went off at Coppice in the gravel trap.
Will Rossetti, a great result for you and a perfect start to the weekend.
Yep, very happy with that. Got to be happy with that. Obviously, safety car made it a bit complicated, but survived the restart. I saw on my mirrors a little bit of carnage behind me on that first lap after the safety car, so you know, capitalised on that, and it was easy from there on, really.
Same again tomorrow?
Fingers crossed.
Harry, great PT for you in what was really tricky conditions out there.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed the wet, but it was tough when Tom and Carl spun in front of me. I almost collected them, but with that lucky event, I managed to capitalise on it and stay second. I had a little bit of a fight with Blair on the restart, but yeah, it was a really good race. Pleased with my performance.
And what goes through your mind when you've got two cars spinning in front of you? I mean, the rule is aim for them, because by the time you get there they've gone, but it doesn't always happen like that, does it?
Yeah, I sort of did aim for them, and then suddenly at the last second they kept rolling into the gravel. So yeah, I think it would have been a big one if I did hit them.
Blair McConaughey, a great P3 for you in what was really tricky conditions. You've got to be really happy with that.
Oh, I'm definitely very happy. I think I got quite lucky. I don't really think I was on the pace today. I had good dry times, so hopefully that's in testing for hopefully tomorrow. That'll come good for me. But today I was a bit off the pace, so I was very lucky to see the two cars spin in front of me. Unlucky for them, but I just had to pick a gap and go. And really, I don't think I had the pace of Will or Harry. But like you say, very glad for third.
And making any changes to the car, or are you just going to use all your esport practice ready for tomorrow? I'm not bitter at all, don't worry.
Yes, sorry, I've just clocked too hard. I think I'll do a couple of tweaks. It seems to be pretty good in the brakes, but I'm maybe struggling a bit for traction. We'll see what we can do with that and hopefully come out for a better performance tomorrow.
So we are not that far away from getting our next race underway, but the Formula Ford 1600 Championship. Hopefully we will have time to speak to our podium finishers. What I will do, I think, is just start running through the grid for our next race, just so that we can give Scott as much time as possible to chat to our top three finishers. Again, this is the second race of the weekend for the 270Rs, who have a grid to themselves because there are nearly 30 of them. Yesterday's race won by Will Rossetti from Harrier in second and Blair McConaughey in third, so that is the way they line up on the grid then. Rossetti, McConaughey and Rob Keogh, former Ginetta frontrunner, is on row 2 with him. Stuart Bell and Max Gaunter on the third row. Carl Jones and Demetrius Melas are on row 4, ahead of Fraser Jones and Chris Ephraimidis. Wes Payne and Tim Steele make up the 6th row, ahead of Darryl Creswell and Will Brunt. Tom Willis and Stefano Maurer are on the 8th row together. Paul Herndon and Alan Curtis on row 9, and Paul Farrell and John Cox on 10th row. David Morgan and Ryan Errol are together on row 11, ahead of Pete Wales and Duncan Cook. Then it's Richard Hoare, Steve Hutchinson, one to watch I think, from the 13th row. Michael Curley and Oliver Smith are on row 14, and Roger Gaunt on the 15th row all by himself was the only non-finisher yesterday in what was another very wet race. It wasn't actually raining anymore by that point in the morning, but the afternoon I should say, but it was still very wet, lots of standing water, and despite that we had an entertaining race, but Will Rossetti won it by 2.5 seconds in the end over Harrier in second. So we'll wait and see whether or not Rossetti's going to have it quite so easy this time. I somehow suspect that he might not. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for anybody to break away at the head of the field here. So cars then looking resplendent under the spring sunshine. We are in May after all. We should have some nice weather by this time. We certainly didn't yesterday, but yeah, bone dry track out there now today. Not that warm here at Donington Park, but the track temperature will be up a little bit from what we had yesterday. Green flag lap then gets underway. So the cars are just lining up on the grid. Will Rossetti then, who started second in yesterday's race to take the victory. In fact, that was a bit of a theme yesterday. Often the driver that started on pole position was not actually able to win the race. In fact, I don't think a single one of the races yesterday that we had was won from pole position. It was almost always won from second or third on the grid. So goes to show that qualifying only tells so much of the story, really. Will Rossetti won. It was actually Tom Willis that had the pole position yesterday, but Tom Willis ended up down in 15th place, presumably after some sort of an off, because he was 35 seconds off the lead by the end of the race. Caterham 270Rs then, sort of in the middle of the Caterham ladder. You've got Academy, then Road Sports, then 270Rs. So it's the third rung, if you like, before you move on to 310Rs and Caterham 7 UK. So most of the drivers out there have been racing in Caterhams now for a number of years. And let's see what happens then in this second round of the Caterham 7 270R Championship. Red lights go on, they go out now. Will Rossetti from the inside of row 1 in the Gulf liveried car tries to get down to Redgate Corner ahead of the rest of the pack. It looks as though he might just do it alongside Alongside him, though, still is Harrier in the green and yellow, number 55. Into Redgate corner they go. It is going to be Willis that gets, sorry, it's going to be Rossetti, excuse me, that gets the lead as they turn through the right-hander. Let's see if they all get through, though. That's the next question, because we've got some 29 of them to squeeze through this first sequence of corners. Looks as though they're keeping it clean for now, though. It's Rossetti that leads. It's Harrier in second position. I think that is Blair McConaughey still in third. Challenge for the lead, and Harrier goes through on the inside of the old hairpin. So that didn't take us long. Harrier straight through into first position. Some drivers like to lead from the front right at the start of the race. Others maybe are happier to let the race come to them. It looks like Harrier fits into the first of those categories. He wanted that lead at the first possible opportunity, and now he'll try and pull the pin and break away from the chasing pack if he can. Side by side further back, the number 11 goes through there of Carl Jones. He was in the thick of the action yesterday, as he often seems to be, it must be said. And there, number 9, going through the picture is Rob Keogh, making a racing return after a couple of years away. Former front runner in Ginetta Racing, and in the car that was previously driven very successfully in this championship by Harry Cook. Second lead change in less than a lap happens going into the chicane, because it is going to be Will Rossetti that actually leads lap 1, despite having lost the lead halfway round the lap. Second place then is Harrier. Third for Blair McConaughey, and it is going to be Rob Keogh there in fourth position. Down to Redgate they go. McConaughey in the white and black car goes up the inside of Harrier. He takes second place away, and Rob Keogh now tries to go right round the outside. He might do it. No, not quite enough grip out there in these dry conditions. The green and black car then in fifth is Carl Jones, and he's sort of in no man's land really. He's a second and a half behind the leading quartet, but he's just over a second ahead of Roger Gaunt, Max Gaunt, excuse me, the number 4, who leads that next enormous group of cars. So they're the leading 4. On his own in fifth place then is Jones, and then everybody else in this long train from 6th place back to 29th basically. He did get all 29 cars starting as well, so no one missing at the start of the race, which is good to see. Blair McConaughey now going for the lead. So he took second from Harrier at Redgate, and now he takes the lead away from Will Rossetti up at McLean's Corner. But in a 30-minute Caterham 270R race, you have to learn to pace yourselves, both as a driver and as a commentator, because if you start getting really excited about lead changes at this stage, then you'll have no energy left by the end of the race. We'll see lots more lead changes, I think, in the remaining 27.5 minutes, unless perhaps Blair McConaughey can start to make a break. He's actually starting to do that, because behind him, they're side by side for second place. Harrier going around the outside there of Will Rossetti into the chicane. Rossetti tries to fight it, and that delays them even further. Rob Keogh gets the run off the chicane now, pulls up alongside the blue and orange car of Rossetti, and now they've also allowed Carl Jones to reel them in too. Jones just set the fastest lap, look, 1:21.307, so he was about a tenth quicker than the race leader, and immediately starts overtaking people. He's passed Rob Keogh already, and now he goes up the inside of Will Rossetti into Redgate Corner. He's got through, I can see out of the window, elbowed Rossetti wide, and so Rob Keogh's got through as well. Whoops, way wide into the gravel goes Darryl Creswell. The number 8 car is so far away from the track that I think he has to pay to get back in. He was almost in the tyre wall there, so far off the road had he gone at Redgate Corner, and that will send Darryl Creswell right down to the back of the grid. Didn't see how he got there, whether he jumped or whether he was pushed, but it's quite possible it was the latter, given how close that midfield group was that he was a part of. Gaunt came across the line momentarily before that in 16th place. There's Rob Keogh then behind Carl Jones. So Jones got himself into third position there, didn't he? It's McConaughey that leads. It's Air in second, and then a bit of a gap back now to Rob Keogh in third. There is Will Rossetti, who was leading the race up until half a lap or so ago. Now he's got to try and regroup here. He's on the tail of the third place battle. There is the leader, Blair McConaughey. Now, he had nearly a 1 second advantage at the start of the lap. The gap, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, was 0.922 of a second. They come through now to complete the third lap of racing, and let's see who's quicker. McConaughey goes through, does a 1:21.3. It's a 1:21.5 for Harry Air, but Wes Payne, look, in 7th position, is the fastest man on the track. So Wes Payne now, the latest man to start building his way toward this front group. He's in 7th place there, you can see, just at the back of that group, using a nice slipstream from the cars ahead to set that lap time, which is already significantly quicker than we went yesterday. The fastest lap in yesterday's wet race was set by Tom Willis, a 1:32.9, and we're already about 11 or 12 seconds quicker than that right now. What of Tom Willis, by the way? Tom Willis from deep in the field, of course, after his dramas yesterday. Started on pole yesterday. Well, he's up to 9th place now, is the number 81 car. So Tom Willis is making good progress here. He picked up another place on the previous lap at the expense of Ephraimidis. So, yeah, keep an eye to the number 81, you can see the drivers' numbers up against their abbreviated names on that rather snazzy-looking scoring pylon on the left-hand side of the screen. Number 19 we're seeing on screen there, working its way through. That's Stuart Bell, who's running in the 11th place, just behind Ephraimidis actually. He's not far ahead of that group is Tom Willis, the man I was just talking about. Leaders out of the chicane then. McConaughey leads the way, Harrier second. The gap was just a fraction over a second at the end of the previous lap. I reckon it might have come down slightly. No, it didn't actually, went out by half a tenth. Behind, it couldn't be much closer though. Rob Keogh is alongside Carl Jones for third position. Wheel to wheel for P3 into Redgate corner they go. Keogh on the outside will get it, with Jones down to fourth. Then it will be Rossetti in fifth. And sixth place there, I think that was Wes Payne just losing out actually. He tried to go around the outside of Jones there and couldn't quite do it through Fraser Jones, that is, going through Redgate corner. Fraser started ninth and has worked his way now into sixth position. So again, going to show that you can definitely make forward progress in Caterham racing. Down through the old hairpin again. Up towards Starkey's and Schwant's curve they go. It's like McConaughey then has enough pace in hand at the moment, doesn't he, to keep Harrier at arm's length. The real battling is going on behind those two, as around the outside line there attempts to go Wes Payne in the 38 car, and then Tom Willis, look, is the car right behind him. So Tom Willis, we know, has front-running pace here. He was out of position on the grid after his issues yesterday, but that number 81 car, look, is right behind Wes Payne now as they head out of Coppice and go along the exhibition straight down towards the Robert chicane once again. McConaughey, the race leader, gets there first, of course, some way before anybody else. There's Harrier in second. Rob Keogh is still third, but did Tom Willis manage to make that move on the brakes, I wonder, into Redgate corner? Sorry, into the chicane, I should say. No, he didn't. He's still at the back of the group. So McConaughey then leads the way. Air 2.1 seconds back still. In this battle, though, this is where the action is. The red car is Keogh. Rossetti there goes up the inside of Carl Jones, and then just behind, Wes Payne has a big go at Fraser Jones, and in the end doesn't go through. So Rossetti gains a place. Wes Payne does not. And Tom Willis has stayed in 8th place just at the back of the group. So still more or less as it was. Wes Payne, though, actually has Carl Jones coming back at him now as they drop through the crane of curves and turn through the old hairpin. Willis up the inside of Wes Payne there, gets the place. So Tom Willis up into 7th place now, having started the race in 15th. And so a podium is still on the cards here. We're still not even a third of the way through this race here. And he's within touching distance of third place. Rob Keogh, the red car just there, is in third, ahead of Rossetti, Jones and Jones. Carl Jones ahead of Fraser Jones. And then it's Tom Willis behind. The hill again through Coppice corner then. Rossetti there in the number 29 car, started on pole, led early on, got shuffled out a couple of laps into the race and hasn't ever really fully been able to recover since then. Fraser Jones having a go at Carl Jones behind them as well. McConaughey turns his way into the chicane. This lead gap continuing to creep up just by a tenth or so every lap. Rob Keogh under pressure from Rossetti for third. How quickly things can change. A corner ago, I was about to say that Keogh was getting away a bit from Rossetti behind, but that slipstream down that back straight is so powerful. It's not even into a headwind today either. The wind is blowing from right to left as we look at the start-finish line from that camera angle. But even so, that slipstream is allowing them to really reel each other in, even from some distance back, actually, down the long straight past the exhibition centre and also down the pit straight. With a car on the grass out of the window, I can see. Number 40, that was, Paul Farrell. I'm not quite sure how he ended up on the grass. In fact, there's a wing I can see that's up near the tyre wall coming out of the chicane. So I wonder if he's made some contact with the wall and was just bouncing his way back on the track. We'll see if we can piece that together a bit later on. The midfield battle comes down through the old hairpin then and works its way up towards the far end of the track. We are nearly 1/3 of the way through this second round of the Caterham 7 270R Championship for 2021. Blair McConaughey has a 2.7 second lead over Harrier, with Rob Keogh, Will Rossetti, Carl Jones, Fraser Jones, Tom Willis and Wes Payne all battling to be third position. 4 goes through there. That's Max Gorn. Now, Max Gorn started 6th and he's only 10th now, so he, I suppose, the amount of people we've had gaining places in this race, then by definition there must then be others that have lost places, and Max Gorn definitely is one of them. Harrier, far from going after Blair McConaughey here, I think is being reeled in by Rob Keogh, is he? Yeah, Keogh was 8/10 quicker than him, so Rob Keogh, despite this pressure that he's under from Will Rossetti, he is catching the second place man Harrier. Rossetti goes to the outside at Redgate, and he's not going to make that one work through the first corner, and they almost loses it actually on the exit as well. He was a bit too eager on the right pedal there as he tried to accelerate out of turn 1. But these two, if they just work together, they could absolutely catch Harrier here and make this turn this battle for third into a battle for second place. Through the old hairpin though, single file for now, but they weren't single file at Redgate. That means they were probably holding each other up rather than working together at that point on the circuit. Here goes that 88 car that we've seen a bit of. That's one of the other Gulf livery cars. William Brunt, that is, number 88, running in 15th place, just behind Ephraimidis, who has been slipping down the order slightly. Chris Ephraimidis from 10th on the grid. Number 19 there, that's Stuart Bell, isn't it? Yeah, he's also dropped down the order into 13th. So this is the group battling just outside the top 10 in the race, but still points on offer for these positions. So worth fighting for if you think you've got a chance of gaining a few more positions, gaining a few more championship points. They all come in handy towards the end of the year. Right, battle for third sees another change here. That's Will Rossetti back ahead of Rob Keogh. Are they still catching Harry Eyre in second? I doubt. Well, they do. They take 4 tenths out of him that time, but Scott Woodwiss, who joins me again now back in the commentary box, this battle for third is continuing to intensify here, and Tom Willis from 15th on the grid is very much part of it.
Yeah, you can guarantee that where he is now isn't where he's going to stay by the end of the race, because knowing how formidable Tom is at the wheel of one of these cars. Blair McConaughey, meanwhile, is enjoying the free air, of course, whilst he's away from Tom Willis, because usually, as we pointed out yesterday, wherever one is, the other isn't too far away, hence where Tom Willis has managed to climb up to 5th position already.
Car in the gravel, sorry, Scott. Redgate, we haven't quite caught it on the cameras yet, but saw a big cloud of dust. Someone's locked up and gone straight on by the looks of it. Is that going to require a neutralisation of the race? I'm not too sure. It's quite close to the service road, though, so I'm hoping that the live snatch might be able to be used for that one. So up through Copper's Court. Oh, there we go, 94 it is. So 94 is Stefano Mara, I'm afraid. And that looks, Scott, as if he's just locked up and gone straight on, doesn't it? The car never really made it through the corner at all.
Yeah, that, and also as well, he's probably gone in quite too deep and done the classic mistake of trying to floor the throttle to see if he can try and get himself out, and dug himself even deeper. So that really hasn't worked out too well for him. McConaughey and Eyre steer their way through the final chicane. Everyone arrives behind to try and be third. It's Rob Keogh who's managed to squeeze his way past, and Tom Willis is also past Will Rossetti, so Will's lost 2 spots in the space of 1 straight. He might lose more in a minute, because both Carl Jones and Wes Payne and Fraser Jones are all in the mix there. You see Wes Payne in the kind of pearlescent car just behind the black and fluorescent yellow machine of Carl Jones as we head into Redgate Corner on lap 10. And still 17 and a half minutes yet to go in this race as we turn the way out of Redgate Corner and down through Hollywood and the Crane of Curves up through the end of the yellow flag zone. McConaughey looking pretty comfortable in the lead now. 6.1 seconds is the gap over Harry Eyre, and Harry's only about 2 seconds ahead of this next battle for third place. So it looks as though that the pack for third, when they start working together, are much better as a group in punching one big hole in the air together, rather than Harry Eyre doing it all by himself on his own.
Yeah, the trouble is they start to make a bit of progress, and then they start fighting over who's going to be in third place again, and they undo a little bit of their hard work. But yeah, they are almost there with him now, I think, aren't they? So not going to be long before we have a fight for second on our hands. Blair McConaughey 6 seconds clear, though, demonstrating the point here, isn't he, Scott? I think that although it's very difficult to break away in Caterham racing, once you do make that break, it can be very difficult for that next group to get back to you. And Harry Eyre, try as he might in the early stages, just couldn't quite live with McConaughey. McConaughey was taking a tenth or two out of him every lap. He broke the toe, broke the spirit a bit as well, I think, of Harry Eyre. And now Eyre is just starting to slide back towards this group. Through goes Rob Keogh, then Tom Willis is now into 4th place, Rossetti in 5th, Carl Jones 6th, Wes Payne 7th, and Fraser Jones also just slipping back a bit now towards the tail end of that group. And again there, Scott, that gap between Eyre and Keogh comes down.
Yeah, that's now 1.4 seconds, so even just in that group he's managed to take 7/10 of a second on that last lap. It's 122.2 for Eyre, 121.6 for Keogh. The fastest lap of the race currently held by Ryan Errol, and that was just a couple of laps ago. So he's all the way back down 11th place, trying to make some progress up to the top 10. He's just passed Stuart Bell, who's another driver who anticipated to be higher up the order, but not quite working out as well as he'd hoped. As he comes through the Crane of Curves. Watching here the scrap going on between number 4 of Max Gaunt, who's also someone who qualified well yesterday, but just slipping back down the order through these 2 races, and he's having a battle with Chris Ephraimidis and also William Brunt, and a very similar liveried car to that man there, Will Rossetti, who currently sits in 5th position. So leading still as they come towards the end of the lap again. Just Blair McConaughey out of our windows. We watch here Rob Keogh trying to force his way out the inside of. It's more Tom Willis trying to get around the outside of Rob Keogh, mainly because Rob's now trying to defend as much as he can. He manages to get himself back in front, but Willis will try and line him up as he comes through the final couple of corners. Here comes Blair McConaughey to end his 11th lap, still in the lead. Let's see what the gap is now between them. And you can see visibly the gap between Harry Eyre and the chasing pack in third place downwards is visibly close. That has to be under a second now as they come across the line. So Eyre now comes across with a 1 minute 21.1, 22.1, and everyone else was at least about roughly 7-8 tenths quicker. So the gap is now down to a fraction over a second, Andy. And I suspect that whether he wants to or not, Harry Eyre is going to become part of what's going to be a second place battle now in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, what's particularly telling, though, is the fact that they're catching him even though they're racing each other. Normally, when we see them going side by side in the way that Willis and Keogh did there up at the top of the circuit, you'd expect them to lose time over the lap, but they were still nearly half a second quicker than Eyre. So Eyre possibly is struggling for pace a bit more than it's shown so far, and I think now that they've caught him, he's going to have a hard job trying to keep them behind. Further back, this scrap still going on, which involves the number 4 of Max Gaunt. Gaunt is still in 13th position. I say still, he's got ahead of Ephraimidis in the last lap or so. William Brunt in 15th place. Up to the top of the hill, though, goes this second place battle, and they've caught Harry Eyre, and look at that, they make absolute mincemeat of him because Rob Keogh just drives around the outside at Coppice Corner, and Tom Willis is going to try and go with him, I think. Now, which way will Eyre go? He's going to defend the inside line. Who's that going to favour? Who's it going to delay? McConaughey doesn't have to worry too much about this because he is a long, long way ahead. Rob Keogh's into second place. Who's going to be third as they go through the chicane? Well, it's still Harry Eyre, so only lost 1 place there, and now that he's in the pack and he's got a bit of a slipstream, it'll be interesting to see what sort of pace he's got.
Yeah, he should be able to pick it up a little bit and benefit from the tow, which at least Rob Keogh's giving him at the moment. Keogh with a new personal best of a 1:21.400, but even then, he's still a quarter of a second slower than McConaughey, who's running in clear air. So that just shows sometimes, if you're quick enough, how much of an advantage clear air can be. Just seeing there, I think it was Wes Payne squeezing out Fraser Jones on the exit of Redgate Corner. That was a scrap that was going on for 7th and 8th position. As Blair McConaughey carries on. Further back in the pack, this is another scrap that's the battle raging up at the Roberts chicane. Trying to catch some numbers. And one car that's lost it, a big sideways moment. See who that was coming back onto the straight. That was number 48. Oh, the car on the gravel as well. 48 was... that was the 48 of Hoare, rather that car, we couldn't quite see the number, but I suspect it was in the second group behind this one here. I also noticed Harry Eyre's got a flapping left front wing on that car as well, so whether there was contact which led to that, I'm not sure, but everyone appeared to get through the first few corners okay, but whether or not it's someone who is... whoever was involved in that incident was part of this group, I'm not sure. The group behind it might be telltale, because there was the fact of Tim Steele, Demetrius Melas was in there, Ryan Errol, Stuart Bell. In fact, dare I say, it might even miss Stuart Bell, because it looked like it was a grey and orange car. So I think possibly, if he does go tumbling down the timing screen, Stuart Bell might be out of this race.
I think you might be right on that one, Scott. That's a shame. The flapping wing is on Carl Jones's car by the looks of it, so he's made contact with somebody as well as they come across the start-finish line. That's fairly common practice, though, in Caterham racing. Those wings are quite... we see them flying loose quite frequently, just because they insist on getting so close to each other, and that's the first point of contact often. So Carl Jones won't be too concerned about that, although he'd rather it just fell off completely rather than flapping in the wind, because that won't be helping the aerodynamics of that number 11 car too much.
Yeah, I think we can confirm, looking at the fact that he's tumbling down the timing screen. Sadly, it is Stuart Bell that has gone off into the gravel. The live snatch is happening at the moment, but sadly Stuart Bell, who in the past has been quite a front runner and a championship contender, hasn't quite been his weekend this weekend, has it?
No, because he finished, well, he was 5th yesterday, which was okay, but yeah, we would have normally expected him to be really fighting for the victory, and obviously today a non-finish means no points, and yeah, it is the 19 of Stuart Bell. We're getting confirmation there, so there you can see how this live snatch process works. It's not graceful. The car gets sort of dragged unceremoniously through the gravel, and that leaves the teams with a lot of that gravel then to clear out from underneath the car, because it gets absolutely everywhere, and it's not really good for the car if it gets left in there. Right, Rob Keogh and Tom Willis here battling for second place. I think if you'd have told Tom Willis that by 2/3 race distance you'd be fighting for second place in this one, he'd have taken your arm off of that, because that's been a really good recovery drive. Can he make this third place? Second place, though. He looks as though he's got the pace to challenge Rob Keogh. Spin up at Coppice Corner there for somebody, Scott. Can't quite see the number myself on that car.
I think the second number was a 4, so I have to work out, and it's probably one of these groups that are just coming down out of the Robert chicane in a second. So
64 maybe?
Might have been pit 64, that's Paul Herndon. Let's see if he goes tumbling down the timing screen. The answer is... yes, I think it was. So Paul Herndon was the one that was off the road there, and I suspect he was probably helped.
Yes, it's a strange place to end up by yourself there, isn't it, on the inside at Coppice Corner. Stuart Bell is definitely being helped out of the gravel here, and it would help.
of damage on the front of that car, so I suspect he was possibly helped off, I think.
Maybe, or possibly ran into the back of somebody else as he locked up, maybe. It's hard to tell, but I don't think there's any steering damage. I think he just needed to straighten the steering wheel up a bit to help him drag it out of the gravel. Harry Air, by the way, now that he's settled into line here, he is kind of holding his own, isn't he? He's got Carl Jones to his outside and Will Rossetti behind him, but he's staying with Rob Keogh and Tom Willis just about. They go down into the chicane then, this second-placed battle, which runs all the way back to, really, Fraser Jones in 8th position, really. Through the chicane they go, Willis on the outside of Keogh. That almost ended in tears. Keogh hangs on. That holds up Willis on the exit, though. And now Harry Air does have a chance to pull out of the slipstream. Pulls left, but as soon as he pulls out, he sees a yellow flag. That's why he backed off. I was going to say he seemed to suddenly slow down, but that is because, of course, there are still yellow flags at Redgate whilst they recover Stuart Bell's car, so no overtaking allowed. And that's got to be so frustrating. Oh, so is this. That is 99, I think, isn't it?
That's Michael Curley that's off the road, so sadly it looks as though, again, whether he was helped or not, but that car's up against the barrier, so there's a few cars in the wars at the moment in the last few minutes, and they're all trying to make their way around. It's quite a busy grid, of course, 29 cars, but some drivers falling foul more than others, it seems.
Oh, someone else running wide there at the Robert chicane, but thankfully with less terminal results. That is 13, is it not? That's Duncan Cook, who was having a good battle, actually. He's going to lose a few places, but Duncan Cook running in the 20th position. I say he's going to lose places, actually gains 2 places because Michael Curley's been off on this lap, and so has Herndon, of course, so 2 places gained, actually. Oh, big sideways moment through the first corner for Max Gaunt there, and he's all the way down in 20th, so Gaunt definitely has lost ground somewhere because he was up on the fringes of the top dozen or so when I last saw him. So, yeah, it's turning into a bit of a race of attrition, this. The warmer conditions, of course, mean that tyre wear is also becoming a bit more of a factor. Maybe towards the end of the race, some of them are struggling a bit with that. Rob Keogh's problem isn't so much tyre wear, though. It's a rather full pair of wing mirrors because he's got Tom Willis throwing quite literally everything at him here. He's tried left, he's tried right, he's tried the chicane, he's tried Redgate, he's tried the old hairpin. He still can't get past Rob Keogh. He's on the outside line into Redgate corner again this time. They go on to the 17th lap of racing. Harry Air is there in 4th. Up the inside goes Will Rossetti into 5th. And then Fraser and Carl Jones, again, inseparable, side by side for 6th position. With Wes Payne tagging on at the back. There's always a bit of wheel banging between the Joneses there. Fraser goes through, Carl loses momentum, and so also through will go Wes Payne into 7th.
Yeah, fantastic battling from 7th down to around about 2nd down to 7th or 8th. It's great racing here, and just behind we see another scrap here. Tim Steele ahead of Dimitris Melas, who maybe not as quite on the same pace as he would hope, and he's really throwing the car in to try and possibly prove me wrong there as he tries to go up through the old hairpin and keeps close. Here comes Tom Willis looking to the outside again. Also we see behind it's 2x2 as they go for, well, it's 2x2 for 2nd and for 4th and almost for 6th. So it really is almost like Noah's Ark as they run up towards the right-hander at Coppice Corner. Willis thinks, right, can I maybe try the outside here? Doesn't quite work. Fraser Jones bumps the curve as he gets up the inside of Will Rossetti. Carl Jones is the one that's been shuffled out because he's lost out to Rossetti and also to Wes Payne as they head down the back straight. Meanwhile, to check in with McConaughey, he's just come up to put a lap on Paul Herndon, who has recovered from his spin on the exit at Coppice Corner, and a new fast lap of the race to prove that he has got the ultimate pace. As Willis goes very deep into the chicane, Rob Keogh gets it back again. Willis is all sideways on the exit and loses 1, 2 positions. There goes Fraser Jones and Harry Air. Might lose a 3rd to Carl Jones, which he does, so he's lost 3 more spots. So after scrapping what could have been 2nd place, he finds himself shuffled all the way down to 6th with more work to do with 6.5 minutes to go.
That was a touch of frustration, I think, there, wasn't it, for Willis? Oh, speaking of frustration, there'll be some here, won't there? That's number 30 pointing the wrong way in the gravel.
That's Roger Gaunt. I think he was the one who had the slide earlier on at Redgate, because there are 2. There's Roger and Max Gaunt. Roger Gaunt's the one in there. The other one, I'm not sure who it was. Who was he closest to on track? Maybe there was 13 of Cook, I think, but whoever it was in there, it was certainly a black car, if anyone's in terms of identification. And it looks as though even from the cockpits they're having a bit of a gentle conversation about what happened, because they're certainly communicating in some cases.
It would be so unlike 2 racing drivers who have had contact to disagree with each other, wouldn't it? But I think there may be a small disagreement going on there up at the top of the circuit. They're still remonstrating at each other now as they sit patiently and wait for the marshals to come and collect them. They're quite a long way off the track, but I do wonder if that, because there are 2 cars there, not just 1, whether they're actually going to be able to deal with that without the use of the safety car. We'll wait and see. be a shame if we've got a safety car now, because likely the race would end behind the safety car if that were the case. So if race control decide they can move those cars safely under waved yellows, then that is what they will choose to do. Harrier comes through the final chicane. Of course, he's back into third place now, isn't he, with Fraser Jones, who about 10 minutes ago, Scott, I'd written off. He dropped way behind this group, but he's managed to reel them back in, work his way into fourth position. Behind him, we've got Carl Jones, Wes Payne, and the recovering Tom Willis together, and Willis gets just casually passes two cars in one going into Redgate Corner. That's the Tom Willis we know and love. Brilliant move made there, and he moves a little bit closer now towards the front again.
And that certainly was opportunity. I think he took the maximum opportunity from the fact that Jones and Payne were so focused on battling each other that they just completely left the door wide open for him to slip through, and just knocked on the door and said, "I'll take those two places if you don't mind." The two drivers have finished remonstrating now. I've worked out the other one's Duncan Cook, because he's the other one that was in time going down the timing screen with Roger Gaunt in tandem. So it looks like those two are the ones that are involved, and it looks as though possibly, if they're not going to possibly even do a live stat, they may well just cover it under waved yellows, I think, to make sure that people are aware of what's going on. Yeah, but live snatch hasn't got to them, so I suspect they're possibly just covering it under wave yellows and to ensure that people slow down and don't overtake over there, to minimise the effect of possibly anyone getting hit with any kind of issues. Whilst that's happening, Blair McConaughey now going on to his 20th lap of this race, and he has at the moment roughly a 12-second advantage. All action for third place now as Harrier's back into a podium place. Fraser Jones now has both Wes Payne to his left and Tom Willis to his right. We've been here before, haven't we? Because Tom Willis has been on the outside this time. In the middle is Fraser Jones, and on the inside line once again he's going to be four abreast, because Carl Jones says, "Can I come and play two for fourth place if you don't mind?" He's gone through all three of them, in fact. That was beautiful driving from Carl Jones. Slots past all three like a video game. Goes from 7th to 4th in one move. That's one of the best moves I've seen, and it was absolutely effortless. Scott the slipstream, don't mind if I do. 1, 2, 3, sorted. That was incredible stuff from Carl Jones. Great opportunistic driving.
Well, hey, if you've got the run and they leave a gap for you, then why not go for it? And go for it he did. Works, as you said now, beautifully up to nearly at the front of that group. So that'll be fourth place for him now then. Harrier still third. Of course, Rob Keogh is getting away from them now, well, has got away from them really, as they've been tripping over each other for third. So only one of these drivers then likely to make it onto the podium. At the moment, it's Harrier. They go into that yellow flag zone up at McLean's, which would usually be a half-decent overtaking opportunity, but not anymore. For the remaining 3 minutes of the race, it looks like that will be a no-go area as far as passing is concerned. But everywhere else, though, we are still green, and that means there are plenty of opportunities for these places to change hands. Checkered flag has gone out early, so that was always the other option, wasn't it? They might choose to throw the checkered flag early as a result of the yellow flag. So McConaughey's won, Rob Keogh will be second, and Harrier, I think, is going to come home a very, very close run third place. Carl Jones should be fourth, and Tom Willis was making a run on Fraser Jones. No, sorry, that wasn't Tom Willis, that was Wes Payne making a run on Fraser Jones for fifth, and he snatches it on the line as well. So Wes Payne fifth, Fraser Jones sixth, Tom Willis down in seventh. He'll be really disappointed about that. Will Rossetti, equally having led early on, ends up in 8th position. Demetrius Melas in 9th, and Tim Steele will round out the top 10. So, yeah, they've thrown the checkered flag because they have those two cars in a dangerous position. Rather than throw a safety car and waste everybody's time by running around behind the safety car for the last 5 minutes, they decided just to throw the checkered flag a lap or two early. It didn't really make a huge amount of difference to the result, at least as far as the top two are concerned, because Blair McConaughey and Rob Keogh were always going to be top two positions. I think Harrier, though, it did mean that he had a couple of laps fewer that he would have to defend his third position. So he is able to bring it home on the podium then, with Carl Jones fourth and Wes Payne in 5th position. So another entertaining race there. It's the last time we'll see the Caterham 7 270Rs on track today, but we will have one more Caterham race a bit later on after lunch. That will be for the Caterham 7 UK Championship and the 310Rs. They have 3 races over the course of the weekend. We have one more race before lunch, and that is for the Ford Modified Series, and that is a race I've been looking forward to ever since I saw the cars out qualifying earlier on, because it's a really eclectic mix of cars and a big grid, 35 cars, but a really, really varied one as well. They may all be Fords, but we've got everything from Ford Escort Cosworths to Ford Fiestas. We've got Ford's RS200 even, Wayne Crabtree out there. So yeah, that's going to be a really entertaining race, I think. That will be our last race before lunch. But before that, we'll hopefully have a chance to speak to our podium finishers. Scott is making his way down to Parc Fermé now. and the drivers, I think the last few drivers have made their way through, so let's hopefully confirm the race result then for our second round of the Caterham 7 270R Championship. Yesterday's race won by Will Rossetti. Today, though, it's Blair McConaughey's turn to stand atop the podium. He wins from Rob Keogh second, Harry Eyre third, Carl Jones fourth, and Wes Payne in fifth position. Fraser Jones was sixth ahead of Tom Willis. Will Rossetti, Demetrius Melas, and Tim Steele rounds out the top 10. Blair McConaughey set the fastest lap, by the way, when he got into some traffic and was able to use a slipstream to increase his lap times. Ryan Errol there was 11th, ahead of Max Gaunton, Chris Ephraimidis, Will Brunt and David Morgan rounding out the top 15, ahead of Pete Wales, John Cox, Oliver Smith, Richard Hoare and Paul Herndon, with Paul Farrell in 21st. Darrell Creswell, for some reason, not classified as a finisher there. Alan Curtis and Stephen Hutchinson are, and then we know that Roger Gaunt and Duncan Cook are in the gravel at McLean's. Michael Curley went off at the Old Hairpin. Stuart Bell went off at Redgate Corner, and we lost one of the, didn't we? Oh, yeah, we lost the 94 of Mara in the early stages as well. So it turned into a little bit of a race of attrition, that one, but good racing nonetheless when they weren't falling off the road, and that is a good sign of what's to come, I think, later on in the season for the Caterham Motorsports Championships. And if you want more information on the Caterham Motorsport ladder, or how to get involved in racing, where to go to watch the racing perhaps, then do head to their website, www.caterhamcars.com/motorsport. So it really is a great way of going racing, because if you buy yourself a car and enter it into either Academy or Road Sports, then you keep the same car then and you just upgrade it. You send it back to Caterham, they make the relevant modifications to allow the car to race in the next class up, and then you move up into the 270Rs, into the 310s, and then eventually you'll get a new car when you move right up towards the top of the ladder, in particular racing in the Caterham 7 UK Championship that we'll see a bit later on today. Blair McConaughey there in the Parc Ferme area. Thumbs up as he celebrates his first victory of the year. A dominant one it was. I mean, life made a little bit easier by the fact that the others behind him were so busy falling over each other. Rob Keogh with another brilliant drive, and that's been a solid weekend for Rob Keogh, hasn't it? Because Rob was fourth yesterday, and Keogh, as I said, moved from Ginetta Racing into Caterham's a number of years ago, and managed to get himself on the podium here, second position, and rounding out the podium places Harry Eyre in third, who spent most of the race in second place, ended up third. Right, let's have a word with those three then. Scott Woodwiss has made his way down to Parc Ferme.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Another fantastic race for Caterham. We're going to have a chat to our top three for the 270Rs. I think the winner, of course, is over here, just having a chat. I believe he's over here, actually, which is Blair McConaughey, so we'll have a quick word with him. Blair, well, that's not too bad to start, isn't it? Fantastic victory, and you pretty much went off at a canter and no one can touch you.
Such a change from yesterday. I was a little bit out of sorts yesterday. I definitely didn't really do that well in the wet. The lines were a bit off, but today it felt more like the testing that we'd done before. I think I got lucky. I'm not sure what happened behind. I guess there was a lot of fighting. I just saw the gap just grow and grow behind me, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. Just had to keep up the pace and hope there wasn't a safety car.
Thankfully there wasn't. You managed to pick up the victory. You look really fired up for this season, of course. You have got your old rival from the Academy, Tom Willis, back in the mix as well. And we keep joking in the commentary that you two can never seem to leave each other alone on track, but you managed to get away from it at some point in this race.
I know he's always there, or he's usually always there. I guess someone must have held him up. He probably had his own battles. I love fighting with Tom at the front, although if I have a lonely race at the front, I'm quite happy with that as well.
Next race is at home in Scotland. How do you feel about that?
Fantastic. A lot of pressure, but I know the circuit really, really well. And I can't wait to actually put a good show on for the home crowd.
Well, you have today here at Donington, so well done. Go and enjoy it. We'll see you at Knock Hill.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Great stuff. Let's go have a chat to second place man, which is Rob Keogh. Rob, well, welcome to Caterham Racing. I know you're quite different from the Ginettas you've raced before, but how did you find that, second place?
Definitely a baptism of fire. I've done a fair bit of racing in the Ginettas before, but first of all, I've had a year off for obvious reasons, got fat, got out of touch with it all, and then jumped in a completely different car, and they are quite different. They're good fun, they really are, but they're just a different style of driving, which I'm sort of struggling with. I bought the car last week, had one day of testing on Thursday. Yesterday was obviously a monsoon, so that was weird. And today I felt a little bit more on top of it, but to be honest, I feel a bit bad for the guys behind, because I was just, all I could do was mess with, try and back them up to some degree, or just try and defend like it was, like it was all that counted, really. So yeah, it was good though.
Yeah, but you managed to get a good result yesterday despite the weather, and a podium today, so not bad for a first go in Caterham's.
No, I'm happy with that. I was thinking top 10 I'd be happy with, and yesterday, to be honest, I got handed the 4 to some degree. A couple of, 2 or 3 people went off, and yesterday was tough. I couldn't figure it out at all. All the little nuances that are different with the car are just amplified in the wet completely. And it's just, understeer, oversteer, wombling free.
But you're enjoying it though?
Oh, of course I am, yeah. It's just not, after a year off, it's nice to be back at the track, especially in the sun. Yesterday, not so much, but...
You've got Not Killed coming up, so how do you rate your chances there?
Well, I better set off now, I suppose. Yeah. I've never even played Not Kill on a sim or anything. So I don't know. I'll have to get on the old neeps and tatties and dig out my rain. I need Not Kill sounds like it might be wet, so I just need some more time in the car. So, but
well, welcome to Caterham Racing. You've announced yourself pretty well, so go and enjoy it, and we'll see you in Scotland.
Cheers. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well done. Let's see if we can grab as well Harry Eyre in third place, who's over here. He was part of that massive battle pack. He's having a chat with some of the guys that were involved in it. Let's see if we can grab Harry and have a word. Harry, quick word. Well, that was pretty intense, wasn't it? Just massive battling, and everyone wanted to be third, but thankfully you managed to squeeze your way through. And at one point, you had second out quite far out, and then and everyone else caught up.
Yeah, I just couldn't hang on to Blair. I stayed with him for a few laps and made a big mistake and slid off, and then I was on my own, and then it was just a matter of time before everyone caught me. But yeah, I was pleased to hold on to third. A few war wounds on the back, got touched a few times, but got through unscathed mostly, so yeah, pleased with third.
Good stuff. Pace-wise, with the upgrades to the 270R, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it's nicer to drive, especially in the wet yesterday without a windscreen. It was a real treat, but yeah, it's a nicer car to drive in the dry as well. Really good fun.
How do you rate your chances possibly at Not Kill? Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I've not driven the circuit. I've played on racing games, so I kind of know where it goes. But it's going to be a challenge learning it in reality. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.